Okay, good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, April 8th, 7:30 p.m. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Finance to order. Our agenda is really broken up into two different pieces tonight. The first is going to be a series of transfers, some of which we have some guests and staff here that we're going to talk about. That should not take that long, and then we're going to move on to the to finalizing the budget and passing all of the associated resolutions in connection with that. So first item on the agenda is going to be public comment. If anybody has public comment they'd like to make, I would just ask that you just sign your name on the sign-in sheet and then just step up to the podium.
I already did. I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? Crystal Hill, 300 Brookside Road. Good evening. Thank you for your time and consideration you've dedicated to this year's budget process. I'm here tonight as the co-chair of CDSP, representing the 7 PTOs across the Darien School District. I've spoken throughout this process, so I'll keep my remarks brief and focus on summarizing our key message. We fully support the budget proposed by Dr. Adley and the Board of Education. We believe the Board of Ed has conducted a careful, thorough, and transparent process, one that thoroughly balanced the needs of students and staff with the importance of maintaining fiscal responsibility. As a result, the proposed budget reflects a 4.92% increase over last year. Given the significant number of contractually mandated cost increases and the broader inflationary pressures we're all facing, we believe this level of increase is both necessary and appropriate to maintain the high standard of education that families in Darien expect. It's also consistent with the budget increases passed by comparable districts in our area. Parents in this community expect our schools to be properly funded, not just to preserve the quality of that drew many of us here, but to ensure that we remain aligned with our neighboring districts. We believe any cut to this budget would directly and negatively impact our students and staff. We respectfully urge you to approve the Board of Education's proposed budget as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. With that, we'll close public comment. So the first item on is one of 4 different transfers, and discuss and take action on the request to transfer $11,169 from our Board of Finance Capital Reserve to a public works project to replace the Freightliner in the back of a truck.
This is a large dump truck. They actually had $225,000 appropriated in fiscal 23, another $75,000 appropriated in fiscal 24. There was a additional cost because there was an 18-month delay in getting the truck. They had to work with multiple vendors to get what they needed for the vehicle. So they have a $300,000 appropriation right now. They need another $11,169.
And this is basically just to adjust for the cost, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's a memo included in the packet. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Yeah, I mean, don't we normally have a guarantee on the price when we do these?
Not on this type of vehicle. That's usually only on the larger fire apparatus. Because it's, for the fire apparatus, you can place the order and it's 2 years or more now for delivery, so it locks in the price. Something like this, we're just buying the dump truck, the body, the parts that we need for it. And they were chasing around trying to get a vendor that had the right truck, that had the right hydraulics, that sort of thing. And so until we could get what we needed, prices were escalating.
Do we have any guarantee that this is it?
Ed says this is it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll accept the motion to approve a transfer of $11,169, again, from our capital reserve to the Freightliner replacement. Dan moves. Jenny seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, the next item is discuss and take action on the request to transfer $4,214 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Mather HVAC Systems Upgrade.
It's part of 2 Mather HVAC projects. We had town funding, we had some ARPA funding. so it's from a couple different places. Overall, the projects are over budget. A portion of this is because they had to change the type of freon that was required for the new equipment. That was an unexpected cost that wasn't included in the bid price for the 30-ton AC unit. And then they had to upgrade the failing HVAC steam heating coil for the small gym area, and it was slightly more expensive than originally estimated. This is the end of the project. This will close out the project and be complete.
Any other questions on this? Okay. Yes, given that we had the transfers related to public works were relatively small, I just did not ask Ed to come. So I'll accept the motion to transfer $4,214 from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to the Mather HVAC System Upgrade. Taylor moves, Mullen seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next one is discuss and take action on a request to transfer $10,500 to the Parks and Rec operating supplies. This is related to the Parks and Rec Commission and the Parks and Rec Department are recommending the purchase of a sort of temporary pickleball mat that would sit on and be integrated into one of the Weed Beach paddle courts. Jim, do you want to give us
Sure.
a little update? The only thing I would ask is if you wouldn't mind either sitting at this table or standing up here just so that the folks on TV
Stand up there.
can hear.
Okay, stand up here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jim, I forwarded around some of the materials that you and Ed had sent around. Thank
So
you
you have
to
the
the
pictures
group.
and the installation and everything?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so what we're asking for is working with a company called Pickle Roll out of Knoxville, Tennessee. They would provide us with the flooring, which is made up of 4x4 panels that would, as Jim just mentioned, be placed over an existing paddleball court at Weed Beach. So we'd be adding one more pickleball court to the town. We already have 6 up at Cherry Lawn, this would give us another one down at Weed. And there's been a significant demand for pickleball courts. So this would help us out in that way. It would take effect Memorial Day through October when paddle kicks in again. And then we would just lift them up, remove them, store them, put them back down next year, and have a court again. So it's really a temporary solution, and one that has been very well received across the country by various country clubs. One right down here in Old Greenwich that we have already spoken to and met with, spoke to members, very pleased with it. So we think it would be a good investment.
And Jim, these, while you're going to install them on the paddle courts, they can be installed on other surfaces as well?
Yep, yeah. Some of the materials you may have seen, they can be installed in a parking lot. They've been used for events by national brands in New York City, et cetera, when they just want to put down a court, pick it up at the end of the day. So, yeah, it can be placed anywhere.
Are the performance characteristics consistent with a standard pickleball court?
Exactly.
How about acoustic?
Same thing. It's going to be exactly the same as if you're on a court.
How long do they last?
Good question. Several years, I know that.
Okay.
I mean, the wear and tear on it, I believe that in Greenwich, they've had them for 2 years now, and you wouldn't even know. They look brand new. So I could ask that question, but I'm sure we're going to get multiple years out of it. Now, what's also involved with the installation is that we'll get some taping. So as you can imagine, with a 4x4 panel, when you put it down, you're going to have seams. So the taping goes over that so that when it's completely down, it'll be seamless. You won't see anything. It'll just look like a full court.
How long has this product been on the market? Do you know?
The company's been around for about 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Primarily on the East Coast with installations. I don't know why, but mostly on the East Coast.
Do we have any idea how much one pickleball court can generate in revenue?
That I don't know. As far I could get you those numbers though. I mean, we do have those numbers based on the registrations that we have. What I can tell you is the courts that we have at Cherry Lawn are completely booked. They're booked solid, so you
Yeah.
can't even walk on and play there. You have to have a reservation.
It's a great idea.
And by the way, this court also would follow the same rules as Cherry Lawn, so it would be a reservation system and a fee for playing on them.
And it's 1 court or 4?
One court.
1 court.
But we could do more, right? Because we have more.
We could. I mean, we'll look at it and say, you know, how much of a success it was in the first year, and then say in the second year, it's still more demand. What we are going to do is purposely put it on what's called Court 6, which is the new paddle court that we built down there. That's kind of built into the rock and wall there, so that any sound that people may be concerned with would be muffled by that. Then, of course, since it's going to be from Memorial Day through October, the leaves will still be on the trees, et cetera. We did our own walk around there, and we couldn't hear it down at the beach or even around by the front court tennis courts.
I just did a quick check on expected life, and there's a 3-year warranty. Are we getting that 3-year warranty?
We'll have the 3-year warranty.
And then it says a top coat every 3 years should extend the life.
Okay.
So some kind of top coat surfacing, I don't know what exactly that means, some laminate or something like that.
That's probably what
But-
it is. Probably
yeah.
just something that you would put over the tiles. But I could find out more from my
Thank you.
contact. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's a great solution. And just so you guys know, it's 1/8 of an inch, so it's not even, you know, no one's going to trip or anything like that. It's going to be the entire size of the paddle court. So
Is it vinyl? I didn't even notice.
it's like a fiberglass, acrylic fiberglass, with like a kind of, it's a soft top, but it replicates a pickleball court.
It's a great solution.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think
Thanks for
given
finding
that, given how much in demand the court in Cherry Lawn is, I think this is a neat way to kind of to look at and see if this is a way we can expand on existing facilities that otherwise not used during the summer, so.
We're only doing the 4 at Cherry Lawn right now, is that right? Or is there more than that?
No, we just have the ones at Cherry Lawn. This would
That's
be
4,
one-
not-
And this would be one additional one. I'm sorry, 4 at Cherry Lawn.
Right, I thought you said 6, but you meant 4.
I meant 4.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so this would be a 5th court.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
I mean, it's a great inexpensive solution when you think about it. For $10,000, you know, we get this additional court, and if we see the demand is there, we do have another 5 other paddle courts. Not that we would want to, you know, do it on all 5, but if we want an additional court, I would come to you guys and ask for another 10 with the numbers behind it.
I think that's the key, when you guys come to us with the numbers behind it, you can look at sort of what the reservations have been, maybe how much money you've been collecting on it, and that's all helpful.
Right. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, accept the motion to transfer $10,500, Genesis from the Board of Finance contingency, right?
Correct.
Okay, from the Board of Finance contingency within the operating budget to the Parks and Rec operating supplies. Jenny moves, Dan seconds, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, last transfer is discuss or take action on the request to transfer $130,000 to Town Council.
This is one that we've been keeping our eye on through the monthly report. Council expenditures have been running hotter than usual. We knew that this was going to be needed. What we are looking to do is transfer $130,000 that's currently unencumbered in Regulatory Counsel, move it over to the general Town Council budget. To date, on the $250,000 Regulatory Counsel budget, we've only spent $43,000. There is an encumbrance of $76,000 that we don't think we'll use that full amount, so we'll have some more to move over. And the Town Council budget for bills through February, on a budget of $400,000, we've spent almost $464,000. It's a mix of a lot of cases, but there are a couple that stood out. There's a pedestrian easement case that's run about $88,000 through February, and there were a couple of tree appeals, and those totaled about $65,000 through February.
Is that each or in total?
Total for the tree appeals.
Okay.
I expect we're going to need more by the end of the year. Hopefully the bills will calm down a little bit, but I think we're still going to be running pretty hot.
Yeah. I think for some of these, it'd be very good to track them, you know, by sort of by project number or by case number.
We have a case
And make sure we're doing that cumulatively, because I think it's important to know, you know, what some of these things are costing us and what the variability can be.
And is this transfer reflected in your projected surplus?
Yes.
Thank you.
66,000, Jen, was the tree appeals. What was the 82?
80-ish is a pedestrian easement case.
Thanks.
And on the tree appeals, Rob, we haven't actually gone to court yet. So,
This isn't the Great Island trees. This is different, right? Is that one?
It is Great Island.
it is.
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, accept the motion to transfer $130,000 within the Board of Selectmen budget from the Regulatory Counsel for P&Z to General Town Council. Taylor moves, Rob seconds, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, that's it for the transfers. Now on to discussion and action. The first item is going to be the budget discussion and include a review of some of the open items that we had left over from last week's Tuesday and Thursday meeting, and then move forward with the final vote on the budget and ultimately setting the mill rate here. And likely involving reading a very long resolution.
It's your auctioneer time.
We might need to call John in for a
He does a really good job.
stand-in.
Okay, so what I have is open items. First was the bond sale. We had our bond sale today, we sold our bonds and notes. Last week, we had the updated debt service projection that said we were gonna be just under 310,000 more than what we had assumed when we developed the budget back in the fall and what went through the Board of Selectmen. Most of that was based on issuing for a couple more months of cash flow on HHR. So we're issuing more than we had originally thought when we developed the budget. With the results today, we're up higher than that on interest on the bonds. We're up a little bit on interest on the bands, but we're also up quite a bit on premium on the bands. So the net of the result today is on the expense side, we are up 552,000, but that's offset by about 205,000 more of premium on the revenue side. So overall, we're not that far off from the 309 that we had in there as a new placeholder. On the bonds, we have a true interest cost of 4.12, and we got a premium of about $2 million. So that premium will get credited to the projects, the HHR projects. That just means that it's about $2 million less that we'll have to borrow in the next round of borrowing. And the 4.12 is a little higher than we expected, but there is a call in 2032. So there is the potential to refund them sometime in the future if rates go down. And then the other open items that we have for your discussion are $20,000 for the Sidewalk Consultant, $20,000 for Placer.ai, finalizing the Board of Ed number, and there was discussion about the $36,100 for the Park and Rec Financial Sustainability Project.
And Jen, on the bond deal, we're talking about net interest and premium. There's also the extra $2 million effectively will go into the investment fund. Then we'll just use that to fund HHR. So we're effectively funding, I guess, maybe one more month out through July.
Yeah,
Ish.
probably. Ish.
So there'll be a little bit more, slightly more investment earnings because the balance will be a little bit higher for the life of that.
Right.
So net, what's the amount that we're changing related to just the bond deal?
38,000.
38?
Thank you. Yeah, versus the 310 that we had as our new placeholder increase. Yep.
And then the potential is, if you took 80,000, it could be an extra 60 to 80,000 of investment earnings, but we don't know
We don't know.
necessarily. Okay. Okay, any questions on the bond deal and how that was integrated in? I mean, one thing, I think, Jen, the way that I describe it is on, at least on the ban, we're using the premium to effectively pay down some of the interest, right? So it's almost we're capitalizing a small piece of the interest.
So what was the total, including the premium, notional amount of the bonds?
About 50.9 million.
And then we priced bands today as well, right?
Correct.
And how much and where did those price?
We issued we rolled the 49 million that we've had in bands, and I think the tick was 2.94 or 2.96. It was just under 3.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, 2.966.
Right.
And there's $500,000 of premium.
Correct.
And that had 500K of premium.
Yes,
And the bonds had 2 million.
correct.
Thank you. Okay,
And the bonds were at 412,
yeah.
20-year final maturity.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of, maybe we start with the financial feasibility of the 36,000. I don't necessarily see, I think that's something we could take out of this budget, if it were to come back and get a little bit more detail on exactly what the need would be and how it would be used and so forth. I think it's something we can consider down the road, but at this point, my recommendation would be to take that out.
I second that notion. And although the technology can't be exported, I think we discussed whether other departments can learn from it. So maybe in the interim, before we revisit this, we can determine whether that's indeed the case. Recognizing that we won't have actually done it, so it'll be more of a limited judgment.
Is a sense of the board that would.
Yeah, I appreciate the rationale why it was asked for. Like we discussed a couple of meetings ago, I would love to see something like this be expanded in scope, if possible. And I think Parks and Recreation has done a phenomenal job with programming. They're already running a surplus. I'm a little of the opinion of it's not broken, so I don't know that it needs to be fixed today. I think it's doing certainly well, but I like the idea of the cost accounting approach to not just Parks and Rec, but across all other town departments, Board of Ed. I mean, I think it can be a useful analysis for a much bigger strategic operational approach, so. I think it's something to postpone.
Okay. Any other discussion on this?
No, I'm in favor of it.
Okay. The other one was the Sidewalk Consultant. This is $20,000 for, that the town would bring a consultant in to begin to help the town think about how they should evaluate different sidewalks and the cost of executing them, the effectiveness of doing them, and possibly the ranking in terms of prioritization. These are for new sidewalks, not not rehabilitating existing sidewalks.
Correct.
I'm in favor of this one. I think we always don't fare well when we look at walkability scores in our area. And I'd like to see somebody come and really help us figure out what's the low-hanging fruit and how we can best allocate resources.
I think I've made my position clear, but I'm against it. I just don't want to open that dialogue right now.
I'm in favor of it. At first I was questioning how much of a need is this, and I know that pedestrian access has been a hot topic for several years. And once I got more understanding as to the depth of how much this consultant could do in putting together not just the criteria, but really having the expertise to identify and help us identify areas to focus on, that I think that'll help speed along, or if we go down the route of a building committee or some kind of a committee to expand our pedestrian infrastructure, given the growth in the town. I agree with Maureen, we could use more accessibility, so thanks, Jim, for the backup on that.
You're welcome.
I can bring myself to support this. I mean, it's, there's sort of where people may want sidewalks, and then there's feasibility, and then there's cost, because as we've seen with sidewalks and other redoing of intersections, that can involve having to acquire easements on the properties, right? And in different areas, that can all be very complicated, I think, operationally, and can be expensive. So I think this would be helpful in terms of developing an overall plan. I think obviously the cost of these and will be a whole nother consideration. But I do think it would be helpful to have a plan.
My question on this is, if the consultant comes in and recommends sidewalks here, here, and here, and somebody in the town asks for sidewalks, who do we default to? Does P&Z or Public Works step up and go, we don't need one here, we don't? Or is this being used as, this is where we can have sidewalks done, because the consultant recommended it?
Well, it would be it would have to come through the Board of Selectmen to say we want to pursue an appropriation for a sidewalk at this location. If it's recommended, 10 sidewalks are recommended, and for some reason the Board of Selectmen says, yeah, they meet these criteria, but we find them cost prohibitive, there's no requirement to move forward. The consultant isn't going to dictate which sidewalks the town chooses to do. That's going to be decided by the boards through the appropriation process. And the committee would be an advisory committee to help develop the ideas and the priorities and the thoughts on it. But again, they don't decide. It's the town bodies that decide through the appropriation process.
But at the end, they will recommend areas, right?
Yes, there will be a recommendation of you can put sidewalks here, here, and here.
But it doesn't have to be adhered to.
It does not have to be implemented.
And will their recommendation, I guess what's important to me in approving is that what the recommendation comes with, this is something I'm recommending doing, and these are the reasons why, and these are the high, medium, or low cost associated with, and these are areas where I'm saying we're not recommending, and these are the reasons why we're not recommending, not because we don't like sidewalks, but because I just want to make sure there's a well thought out process that's laid out, that then, once this consultant leaves, because this is a what, a 3 to 6 month type project?
I don't know. I haven't really
Okay,
talked about that.
but ultimately, it's not a full-time forever job.
No.
Right? So I think once they leave, I want to make sure they've laid out a very clear blueprint in terms of how things should be evaluated and why certain things were either recommended or.
Right, and it should be a plan that we can implement over time if we choose, and that has enough information that 10 years from now we can go back and say, yeah, it was recommended at the time, but let's take a look. Do these conditions that made it worthwhile at that time still exist?
So
or have conditions changed that now make it a no?
The key words are if we choose. So if the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the RTM all choose to build that sidewalk, that's when the sidewalk gets built.
Correct.
Not until all of that happens.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And I assume this was something that the police department, as the pedestrian,
They would be.
I forgot what the name of they have another role.
The traffic authority?
Traffic authority, right? These are things that would fit inside the scope of what they believe.
Right, they have some, whether or not to put in a sidewalk is multifaceted. There's a lot of groups that are interested. The police are one of those groups, and they would look at it from a safety consideration. How is it with the traffic flow? There's, is there utilities that need to be relocated that would come to cost? There's certain factors of safety. Is it along a curved road, a high speed limit road? There's a lot of, it's not just consider safety, it's what are the aspects of safety that need to be considered. So the police have a role, DPW has a role, the First Selectman has a role because he's the one who hears from residents, and he needs to, you know, there needs to be some weigh in on how many people are going to use that sidewalk. So it goes, a lot of people just think it's either DPW or the police, but there's a lot of groups that need to have input into it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Then the last one is the Placer.ai. Placer.ai.
Yep.
I think, you know, some of the things I'm involved in town, like Great Island and other things, I think this, having learned more about this, I think this could be a very valuable tool to a lot of different parts of the town to kind of understand the use intensity and the use, where the use is coming from, if you will, on a lot of these different parts. And I think, you know, it may actually alleviate needs for other studies that we might look at. It might be able to kind of give us information related to pedestrian, where people are walking, where people are parking. So I'm actually in favor of this.
I'm not, for all the reasons we talked about in the last two meetings.
Okay.
I had similar concerns as Rob on the privacy issue. But what I came to the conclusion of, I agree there could be some great findings. I said to Jen earlier, I'm like, this means we never have to do another traffic study. I'm in.
I cannot.
I know that, but I'm hopeful. But I know that. But I think this opened up another question for me, and I don't think we can resolve it today, but it's around the town-wide risk assessment on all, because this is a third-party software that we're bringing in, and we tend to do that a lot, and I just wonder, have we done a town-wide risk assessment? Are we doing that regularly? Because as we get layer on new, particularly AI software, we need to know what our risk exposure is, our data, what data we have that's exposed. And I just don't know if that's something we're doing already, but I would love to see that is something that is paid attention to, because as we layer on new, particularly AI software, I think the town needs to know where the safety nets and the guardrails are around our data that we're.
Now, I thought we were buying this data, that they were not actually integrating it into our town systems,
I think one thing
right?
you should just make clear is that this license, if you will give us access to data that's publicly available. This is not the town
Yes.
collecting data from any of the residents or so forth. This is effectively going to a service who provides,
Yeah.
Okay.
Who already has that
who already
data.
So
has
they
that
don't-
data
they
and
don't provide
giving it to us.
Yeah.
raw
Right.
data.
Okay.
So we're at the end of the chain of custody. We're not actually generating any of that.
And is it solely cell phone numbers?
Zaps.
It's off of
And then the
apps
information that
collect.
cell phone number carries with it?
I don't think it's by cell phone number. I don't know.
I thought I heard
if-
that earlier.
I think Rob said it was IP address.
I think the phone itself is the
Yeah.
tracking device.
Okay.
I think it's MAC,
It's the
which dates back
device,
to.
it's the device
yeah.
that's being tracked, which, okay.
And then Jen, my question on this is that this is a town-wide license, right?
Yes.
So any department in here?
Yes.
And I think in terms of the usability of it, do they offer training so each department exactly knows what is possible with this and how it might be able to be used? And I guess, is this something the schools could use if they wanted to know, like how many people attend a football game on Friday night, like things like that?
Yeah, because we can set geofences in all kinds of locations, and the data can go back, I think they said to 2017. The data is available. So I think the one use that it is not allowed for is for police. Police are not allowed to use this data. But any other department can use it.
And why is law enforcement not allowed, do you know?
I don't know why, but that is one thing that they have in their contract. but it is not to be.
That they can't use it, they can't use it for enforcement purposes.
I don't remember the exact
Okay.
wording, but also, police department and law enforcement have much better tools than this.
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't need it.
Okay. Any other questions on these three?
The only thing I don't see on the list is our discussion of ECR revenues.
I just have that as BOE in general.
Yeah.
Okay,
So are we no change on the Placer.ai, we'll leave the 20,000?
I'm a no, but I think there's only two of us that are a no,
Yeah.
right?
I don't think Paul has an opinion.
He-
And I
yeah,
think
he
you guys
opted
are,
out.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
right, all four of you.
Yeah, it feels like the consensus here is, or the majority is that, I mean, it's a $20,000 investment, and not that all dollars are important, but I think it's one that we get a lot of use out of. The other issue, before we get to the Board of Ed, I think it's somewhat related to the Board of Ed, is the contribution of cash. So right now, we have $3 million contribution coming in, and that's comprised of the expected surplus, I guess, revenue and below budget amounts on the town side, and the 462,000, I think it is, from the Board of Ed, is what we have baked in, coming back into the general fund, which is permitting us to make this $3 million contribution. I think had we not had all of those surpluses, at least I would have been in favor of a smaller amount being contributed from the general fund. Is everyone still good based on that? Based on the 3 million?
Yes.
I think Paul was okay with that as well.
You had an updated assumption from Rich, it was 429, I think.
Something beyond March 31st?
429 for March 31st.
A lower
Because
Surplus.
we're hiring a search firm.
surplus from the Board of
Instead
Ed.
of 460.
Okay. And so how much have you, what is the forecast?
429.
What?
429.
429.
Okay. And have you went through every one of the accounts on the capital, in the operating budget, and forecasted everyone out through the end of the year?
We have, yeah. I mean, there's still obviously things that could change plus or minus, but the drop really is the anticipation of a superintendent search for
And so it's 40,000 you're spending on that? 30? And that's all in fiscal year for services in 25,
Assuming the
24?
board appoints this spring.
What?
Assuming the Board of Ed appoints this spring.
Okay. But all those services will occur during fiscal 25? Okay. So then on the Board of Ed budget,
Well, wait, so does the 30,000 lower contribution, assuming the money is contributed to the general fund, change anyone's perspective on the 3 million?
Not
Doesn't
mine.
mind,
No,
No.
because
but
I
we
guess
need to make sure.
we're kind of
'cause it's a
saying, I guess
different-
that 30 goes up
Yeah.
against, where was
30,
the planning
the 30.
study,
Yeah.
they just negate each other.
I guess I would say if there was a $30,000 reduction
Yeah.
in their deficit, I'd probably contribute $30,000 less, except for we're not making an increase in the investment earnings, which I think would be $40,000 to $50,000. So I feel like it's,
I think for that
As an
amount of
offset,
money, we
yeah.
have other things that.
Yeah, I
are
just want to make
assumptions
sure
that
we don't go
offset.
past it without discussing it.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I think we're in agreement, yeah.
But it puts more emphasis on the need to get the surplus back.
Yeah. So on the Board of Ed, on the two operating budgets, right, I put together some numbers which I shared with you all. The Board of Selectmen budget, net of revenues and grants on the board that flow into the town side, was a 3.96% increase this year.
Are we talking about ECR before we get to these big numbers?
And the Board of Ed budget was a 4.92% increase versus last year. So combined, given that the Board of Ed is, over 75% of the budget, we're looking at a 4.7% operating expense year after year, year over year. With all the budgets where they are now, as we've just adjusted them, and Jen, I might be off by a decimal here because I'm a little bit behind on your model, but that 4.7% operating, all-in townwide operating expense increase, then has added to it what is about 22% increase in debt service, net debt service,
Now it's up to about 24.
to 24. And is that net of the amounts that we're going to bring in terms of premium? on the
No.
bank? Yeah.
No,
So-
that's purely
Yeah,
unexpected.
so on a net basis on debt service, we're about just over 22%.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. You know, the Board of Ed debt service was up 31.5% versus last year. That's primarily driven by the HHR bonds, which are all coming online, some of which we just, 50 million of which we just issued today. In part, Jen, I believe, is this the first year that we're paying principal on the Oxbridge? Or we will be paying during next fiscal year?
No, we had several tranches for Oxbridge. I think we've already been paying principal probably on the first one, but the second one.
Is, yeah. So on the Board of Selectmen side, there's a 13% increase in debt service. And I think, you know, I would just point out as a reminder, when people have questions about how we're funding our schools beyond the operating budgets, you know, there's significant debt that we've taken on to build Oxbridge and to the $103 million for the renovations that are undergoing for the you know, for the 3 elementary schools, which is what's driving up that debt service by about $1.9 million. When you look at capital spending, you know, much smaller portion of the overall budget, right? But that's up 47% from 4.2 million last year to 6.2 million this year, $2 million increase in non-bonded capital. When you bring all that together, you know, our fund contribution, you know, while technically up 79%, we're going from 1.6 million to 3 million, is we really spent 3 million last year because on the school bus, the 700 odd thousand in terms of buying some of the smaller school buses, and then one of the security upgrades. So we're about flat in terms of that. All in, that creates a 6.45% increase in the tax levy and a 5.5% increase in our mill rate. You know, I think this certainly the overall operating expense increase and the tax levy increase is certainly one of the highest we've seen in 20 years. So, as it relates to the Board of Ed budget, you know, I would recommend that we keep it where it is this year.
Jen, does that 551, my math was 548, but that was before the debt service. So the 551 is including the debt service?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
net for the incremental investment income?
Yes.
Okay.
And just to confirm, sorry, were you going to say something? Nope. This does not have, we didn't get agreement from the unions on the medical health, right?
Correct.
And the ECR reimbursement is at the 65 level and not the 70 level?
Yes.
Is that what we're discussing
That's
next?
what I think we should discuss. I mean, if there's anything to discuss on the Board of Ed side,
Just a lower amount.
to increase
Right.
the expectation that Hartford would put that money back next year.
And again, the only thing we can discuss is changing their budget, not how that change should be applied.
I just wanted to confirm the number. Okay.
So I would propose no change to the Board of Ed budget.
I would second that.
I agree.
Is there anything else you want to discuss?
Jen, just one last thing on the interest then. Are we looking at 3.8 overall?
Oh,
We are.
You know, we added the 850, we had originally had 2, we bumped it to 3, and then I think we added 850.
Right, we picked up 300 from Joan and 550 from factoring in the bonds, so we are at, I think we're at 3,850.
I just want to make sure the board remember, like, we went pretty high on that. I'm not saying we can't hit it, I think we're actually good with
Well,
that.
I think we went accurate, right?
Yeah.
And I think with all of these revenue numbers, whether it be in the town clerk's office or investment revenue, I think what we've continued to hone in on is they should be as accurate as possible, not aggressive, not conservative.
Yeah, I think we kind of beat this one up a little bit
Yeah.
on the interest income, so I think we're all comfortable with it. And the permits is the one that I think Jen sent around yesterday or this weekend, I forgot.
Yeah, over the weekend.
It's been a lot of
that.
And that number is scaled down from last year's, but I think that's
But I think
pretty,
it's
that's,
reasonable.
that's a reasonable number.
So no change in permits.
Right.
Yeah.
And we did go to 99.6% collection rate from
Yes.
99.48
From 4.8.
from a prior year.
And that basically brings it down by 10 basis points, right?
Ish, yes. Maybe a little bit, a little scooch more.
And Jen, while we break this down in like the mill rates here into two different sort of mill rates, one for the reserve fund and one for the general fund, we effectively are still only passing one.
Right, so we just calculate kind of how it's split. So on a tax bill with a 15.5 mill rate, 15.24 is to support the general fund operating and 0.26 is to support the capital expenditures.
I'm okay with this budget principally because so much of it is driven by an unusual increase in debt service, principally to fund $100 million of HHR project. While we'll have demands on our balance sheet going forward, I would not expect another 20 to 25% increase in our debt service in any given year. That would be challenging, but I think that's what's driving a mid 5% tax increase, not overspending by either of the boards.
Yeah, I don't think a long-term 5.5% increase in the mill rate or a 6.5% overall increase in the tax levy is a sustainable or prudent long-term strategy. So,
If we have to vote?
Nope, I gotta, because you made that change on financial sustainability, I just wanna give an updated number.
and the grand list reflects the change that we made to the motor
To
vehicle.
the collection rate.
Yeah. Which, you know, for the public's benefit, it was, as we moved from the 85% to the 90% starting point on the vehicles, it had ended up having a de minimis reallocation from property tax to motor vehicle tax.
Jim, do you have your copy of it handy? Oh, okay. Because there's, let me just give you a little, there's a couple of changes because of the debt service. I feel like I'm being watched.
Jen, why do we always do 2 decimal points and not 3 like some of the other towns?
I don't know.
Okay, so there are 4 numbers that we're going to approve here. So A, I'd like to make a motion that, Jen, can we vote on the entire thing, or do you want us to vote on A, B, C, D?
No, you can vote on the entire thing.
Okay. So A, resolve that an appropriation of $6,180,250 hereby made from the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures for the purpose of meeting the expenses of the town of Darien as shown by the budget this day approved. These are effectively the capital, or the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen capital. That is not being bonded. C,
Don't know why that's not B.
should I make this B?
Sure.
I'll read it as B. Otherwise, Jackal, his spreadsheet won't foot. B, resolve that an appropriation of $58,393,677 is hereby made in the general fund for the selectmen's operating budget. Note that that includes debt service. C, resolve that an appropriation of $125,760,223 is made in the general fund for the education operating budget. D, resolve that the above appropriations totaling $184,153,900 are for the purpose of meeting the expenses of the town of Darien for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2025 and ending on June 30, 2026, as shown by this budget this day approved. E, resolve that a tax of 15.5 mils is hereby levied upon the last complete grand list of the town with a total net assessment value of $11,189,083,966 on the property as of October 1st, 2024, payable in 2 equal semi-annual installments. The first installment to become due and payable on July 1, 2025, and the second installment to become due and payable on January 1, 2026. Provided, however, that any taxpayer may pay both of said installments on July 1, 2025. The property tax on motor vehicles in said town shall become due and payable in 1 single installment on July 1, 2025, and any property tax in an amount not in excess of $100 shall become due and payable in 1 single installment on July 1, 2025. F, resolve that the town of Darien, acting through its Board of Selectmen and subject to the approval of said town at the annual budget meeting of the representative town meeting to be held on May 12th, 2025, be authorized to borrow on the note or notes of the town the sum of $5 million or so much thereof that may be necessary for general operating expenses of the town pending the collection of either or both of the semi-annual installments of taxes on or prior to June 30th, 2026. That allows us to do short-term funding if we're waiting on taxes. Final here, G, resolve that following appropriations for other funds are hereby made as detailed below for the 2025-2026 fiscal year as shown by the budget this day approved. $4,688,907 for the sewer operating fund for the purposes of meeting expenses of the Town of Darien Sewer Commission, $200,000 for the sewer assessment fund, $119,360 for the sewer capital fund, $943,839 for the parking lot administration fund, $50,000 for the parking lot capital fund, $1,685,000 for the recreation program fund, which is a special revenue fund. Jen?
Yes.
And $340,853 for the Great Island Management Fund. Can I get a second? Rob seconds. Would anyone like me to reread anything? Okay, all those in favor?
Can you go C again?
Yep.
It's unanimous.
Whatever the longest one is.
Thank you. So we have a few more appropriations here that are in connection with the budget. The next one is going to be to discuss and take action on a special appropriation of $3 million to fund the fiscal year 2026 capital projects, or fund a portion, right, Jen, of those?
Right.
So can I get a motion to contribute from fund balance, $3 million? Again, this is, we arrived at this by calculating all the expected surpluses. $3 million from the general fund to the transfer out to those various different project funds. Jenny moves, Lynn seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you all. Jen, I'll go with that one.
Yes, definitely.
Discuss and take action on a resolution authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds in an amount not to exceed $154,865,000. Is that the total amount of callable bonds?
That's the total amount that we have outstanding. So this is blanket. If any opportunity comes along, we don't have to go through all three of the boards.
Yep.
We just have to work with you to take advantage of an opportunity.
Got it.
A second.
Okay, Dan seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay.
Wait, no, you did, I moved it.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan
Need a
moves.
second.
Rob seconds.
Yeah.
All those in favor of the refunding resolution? Unanimous. Thanks, Dan. So discuss and take action to approve the fiscal year 2026 Capital Improvement Plan. Okay, this plan outlines the capital projects in part that we're undertaking this year as part of the budget that the 6 million odd capital projects that we approved. This excludes any bonding projects. And then what it does is it outlines over the subsequent 5 years.
Wait, it doesn't exclude any bonding projects.
It doesn't appropriate for the bonding.
Yes, sorry, it doesn't appropriate.
The schedule includes them
Yeah.
though,
Right.
And in no way commits us to doing exactly that.
other than what we just committed.
What this is a 6-year capital plan that identifies different projects that the Board of Selectmen and staff and we have looked at that may possibly be coming down the road and that may ultimately come before us if approved by the Board of Selectmen. They would come to us and then they would be pushed on to the RTM, right? There are projects, some of these projects include things that we did appropriate tonight for some of the smaller ones. Others are ones that we did not yet appropriate and they'll come to us, Jen, in the coming, in the form of bond resolutions, right?
Right.
So nothing, while this totals over the next 6 years, 101 million, nothing's, we're not approving any of these. Today, we're approving the overall capital plan.
The only thing I would say is when you pass this, I would say as amended, because we have to take out the 36,100 for the financial sustainability will come out of year one of the plan.
Okay, so that will come out of the 531,000?
No, out of
The 6 odd million, I think.
The 6 million for fiscal '26.
No, but on the chart here,
9,288,100
is what's in the.
Right, that's Park and Rec's current 9,288,100, it'll be 36,000
oh,
less.
okay, sorry, I was looking in the wrong year.
Yeah.
So, okay. So,
And just to be clear, all we're doing is approving a plan, not anything that's in the plan, because most of it, the vast majority of it, we haven't even seen, it's never come before the board. So just to be absolutely crystal clear, this is not
It's not a commitment.
intention to approve or an approval. It's just we're acknowledging that there's a 6-year plan
Yeah.
and that it's been,
Correct.
right.
yeah.
The only projects that you funded is that 6 million that you just appropriated out of the reserve for capital.
Thank you.
Yep. And but this does include a breakdown of what they are by effectively operating department.
Correct.
So, entertain a motion to approve. Jenny moves, Malin seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, next is discuss and take action on the creation of a Darien Bloom's gift fund and authorize the expenditure of such donations into that fund.
So the Beautification Commission came before the Board of Selectmen, and I apologize, I meant to include the PDF of their presentation. They weren't at the most recent meeting, they were the one before. But they used to have an adopted garden program for years. But that program has kind of fizzled out. They're not getting the donations. We have a lot of small gardens around town. They're not able to give them the attention that they need. So they started out with a very ambitious Darien Blooms idea months ago. I think we originally had it on your agenda, it didn't pass Board of Selectmen, so we pulled it. This is the revival of that. They have narrowed down their number of gardens to 3 that they're going to focus on. They have funds in their current budget to do the plantings, the maintenance, get those 3 up to par. The other ones, the plan is to either take them out, make it just grass so it's nice and neat, easily mown, that kind of thing. But really focus on these 3 gardens. They also want to focus on the patio area next to the Darien Fire Department. Redo the patio and have some benches and some gardens there. So they have $10,000 per year in their budget anyway that they were using for gardening type stuff. That's going to be rededicated to this Darien Blooms. But they also want to raise money through a brick fundraiser for that patio next to DFD. They estimate they're going to raise they're shooting for about $25,000 there. And they've also had people express interest, residents, individuals, local retailers, that sort of thing, in donating to some of the gardens that they are going to be doing. So in order to accept those gifts and expend them over time, my recommendation is that we set up a gift fund, because it's not just a one-off donation. We don't know the one amount that we're going to get. We missed out the fun fund.
Okay.
So what we'd like to do is set up a gift fund. Any gifts in excess of $12,500 need to go Board of Selectmen and definitely RTM. But you're involved because we're also looking not just to accept the gifts, but because they're cash, we need to appropriate them. So we're looking to set up a gift fund that would allow them to accept and expend over a few years.
And so will we be approving a single authorization to spend whatever donations come into this
Yes.
fund?
Yeah.
So this was
But
the
not
one.
tonight. Is that what we're
That is-
moving?
that's
That
what's
is
before
what
you
we're
tonight.
moving.
So
Yeah.
we're effectively perpetually,
Creating a gift fund. We have a few different gift funds
Yeah.
for recurring ongoing donations and ongoing expenditures. This is expected to be a multi-year program.
okay.
Why didn't it pass the first time? I forget.
It was a very ambitious mini garden program and potential for raising a lot more money than what they've scaled it down to, and it's, I think, is a lot more manageable.
What are the 3 gardens?
There's one
Sorry.
at the Noroton Heights train station. There's one for coming off exit 11, and I can't remember where the other one is.
It's not the space next to the fire department?
No, that's the
near Water
difference.
Lane?
That's an addition, yeah.
Is that near Water Lane? Post Road, that Post Road?
I don't want to say yes or no, I'm afraid that,
That's
I
all right.
just don't
Thank
remember.
you. I'm just more curious. That's all.
Well,
And actually, the one at the Noroton Heights train station is on state property, and we can use the parking fund to get that planted, mulched, and then maintained. So we don't have to use general fund dollars for that one.
Okay.
well, I'd maybe first start off by thanking all the people that have agreed to contribute or that will contribute to this. We are very lucky that we constantly have people that are willing to make small, medium, and large donations to do things that might not otherwise get done or make its way into budgets. Okay, any other questions on this resolution? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve a resolution creating the Darien Blooms Gift Fund and authorizing the acceptance of donations into that fund. Dan moves. Taylor seconds. All those in favor? Okay. Well, Jen, now that Paul's here, can we start the project?
from one to another.
Okay, number 10, discuss and take action on a restated appropriation and bond authorization resolution for the Noroton Heights Fire Department retaining wall.
Back in March, you approved the bond resolution for just over $2 million for the retaining wall. It was approved by the RTM on March 17th. When we conducted a search of the property records, it showed that all the work to be done as part of this project is on property owned by the Noroton Heights Fire Department. None of it is owned by the town. As such, we need to amend and restate the bond resolution to specify that Noroton Heights Fire Department is a 501c3 and that these funds to replace the retaining wall are technically a grant to the department. When the time comes and they actually issue the bonds for that portion that was for this project, they will have to sign the tax regulatory document, and they're okay with that. We've gone over it with them. They're totally comfortable with that. One of the key items of why we're able to do this is because the replacement of the wall is in the public interest. If it were to fail, there could be disruptions of fire service and there could be a negative impact on Noroton Ave. If it failed, DPW would have to go in there and shore it up to protect the roadway. So because there's a public interest, we can do this way. The review of the property records did show that the town transferred ownership to the Noroton Heights Fire Department for $1 in 1953. And the deed does require that the department notify the town if at any time they wish to convey or transfer the property, and the town would then have 90 days to purchase or acquire the property.
That provision doesn't have a sunset date,
No.
right? That's perpetuity.
Yeah. And the fact that they're a 501c3 also limits what they would be able to do with any proceeds from that sale.
And we're not netting the $2 million against any potential sale to the town.
No.
Any idea why they deeded this over? Like,
I don't know.
I know it's 1953, but I'm trying to understand why they would.
To transfer costs, probably.
Yeah, I don't know all the history on it, but
If you did,
that would be.
you'd be even more of a star than you are.
Jack probably knows.
Like, I'm trying to understand why they would.
Because they want to transfer costs and maintenance.
This sounds like a good project for like a new finance director to go back and look into what happened 75 years
Figure
ago.
out why in
I searched
1953.
records 20 years ago and couldn't find a bucket, so good luck.
Okay. So any other questions on this? Again, the dollar amount's not changing, and I think either Jen or John, correct me, the bid price and so forth from the contractor that we have is still held.
Yes.
So, and I think it was supposed to expire, I think very soon, and I think they were able to extend it by a little bit so this can make it through the RTM.
Exactly. They've agreed to hold it through the RTM date plus the 10-day effective window in the world.
Is there a reason, I know you were interested in it, but reason not to net the $2 million against any potential sale?
I think we're having some discussions related to, other things that may need to be done in connection with this, but I think at this point, we don't want to lose the overall contract bid, so we want to get this moving. John, any other update or?
No other update.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve an amended and restated resolution appropriating $2,006,100 for costs associated with the Noroton Heights Fire Department retaining wall replacement project, and authorizing the issuance of bonds and notes in the amount of $2,006,100 to meet said appropriation. And the primary change is that the town desires to amend and restate the resolution to specify that the Noroton Heights Fire Department in the town is a 501c3 corporation, and to include a determination that the appropriation of funds for a grant to the Noroton Heights Fire Department is deemed to be in the public interest.
So moved.
Okay, Rob moves, Jenny seconds. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Remind people we can't discuss the terms publicly.
Yeah. So 11, discuss and take action on a request to approve a contract with the Darien Dispatchers Union.
So the Darien dispatchers chose, they were previously part of the Town Hall Employees Union for, I think, as long as I've been here. They've been a part of that union. In 2024, they requested and the town agreed to them forming their own union. There's 9 positions, 6 of which are currently filled. But their working conditions, their needs, their negotiating items are very different than the general clerical type positions that are in the town hall union. So both parties thought it made sense to pull out dispatchers and have them form their own bargaining unit. The bulk of the contract is from that town hall contract, but then items that were specific to the dispatchers were negotiated. So the average annual cost of this contract is about $43,000 per year, mostly because it's such a small bargaining unit. We agreed to a wage increase on 7/1/24 of 3%, 7/1/25 of 3%, 7/1/26 of 2.8%. Once this is settled, it'll be retro wages back to 7/1/24. These rates are the exact same as what we did for the town, where we settled with the town hall union. They had 1 more year on their contract, but the first 3 years are the same as what we had for the dispatchers. They are a relatively younger in terms of steps and years of service. So right now, 1 of the current 6 members is at the top step. By the end of this contract, 2 more will achieve the top step. So overall, it's about 5.47% salary increase between the general wage increase and the steps that they're moving through. The other big economic one is medical insurance. Again, this is consistent with our other unions, so a 12% employee cost share on 7/1/25 and 7/1/26, which goes up to 13% on the last day of their contract. So if the contract is not, we don't have a new contract by the time this one expires, we do have a step up in their contribution to insurance. Some of the other items were really, while not a lot of financial impact, were aimed more at recruitment and retention because we have struggled with that. Part of it we do think was because they were in the town hall union, a new potential dispatcher considering the job, they go out, they look at the contract, it was a little confusing. I think just having them as their own bargaining unit will make that clearer to prospective new hires. But we did make some adjustments to shift differential. They previously only had a $1 per hour midnight differential, that went up to $2.50, and we added a $1.50 evening shift differential. We are on the higher side for the midnight differential to our peers, but it's about a $4,000 impact if every midnight shift is staffed. But in this contract, we did negotiate that on the midnight shift, they can go down to a minimum of 1, and that is all with the chief's approval. So if the chief feels that 2 are needed, he can require that 2 are on that shift. So it's likely that we won't be paying shift differential on every midnight shift.
And can one of them be filled by a active duty police officer? Or does it need to be?
I'm trying to remember the term. So mandatory overtime and certain staffing requirements come into play when they reach fully staffed. So I think that for the time being, the shifts, if no one picks up the shift, I believe it can be filled by a certified police officer.
And then Jen, when you, the salary increases, you had July 24, 25, and 26.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just looking at the medical step-ups. They go through June 27.
Yes.
I just wasn't sure if was one the beginning of the year and the other one meant to be the end of the year.
Wages are at the beginning of the year, and in the body, in the middle of the contract, medical changes are the beginning of the year. But that final day of the contract, we have a step up in medical because when the contract expires and you're negotiating and you're nearly a year later, wages are always retro back to 7/1, but you're not going to get a medical contribution back to 7/1. So we, over the last few contracts, we've had that step up on the last day of the contract.
So basically, this is a 2-year contract, 2 years from
2 years from now.
Okay.
And then we made some other small changes related to comp time. We clarified language around their mandatory overtime and their order back procedures, and some clarification around protected vacation time when they cannot be ordered in. And all of that we think is going to help with recruitment and retention.
Do we have a lot of overtime in this?
Yes, particularly because they have vacant shifts, because they're down 3 dispatchers. So, you know, they're staffed at 2/3 of what is needed to really fully staff it around the clock. So there's a lot of overtime shifts available.
Okay. And we're not approving this, we're just voting to recommend it to the
Correct.
RTM. Okay?
Just a quick word, really great work by Jen and Susan Barksdale on this thing. For people who don't know, I think we started negotiations in July. And it was a lot of stops and starts, but to get it over the finish line, thank you, and thank you to Susan for her efforts.
And you, thank you.
2 things off the list. Now if I can just get HHR over to, only kidding.
Another 2 years.
Not it, exactly.
So I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the RTM that they approve the newly negotiated Darien Emergency Telecommunicators Union Contract Settlement. Rob moves, Jenny seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
That's what they're called, the telecommunicators?
Yes.
Okay, last discussion item is the appointment of Clifton Larson Allen as our auditor for fiscal year 2025.
All right, this would be the 3rd year of the agreed to 3-year term. That's what we agreed to when we did the most recent RFP, to which they were the only respondent. But this is the 3rd year out of that arrangement. We will most likely have a new partner. Our partner that we had left at the end of the engagement. She left CLA. So we did finish up with Vanessa Rosito, who we had as a partner several audits ago, but she has told us that she's retiring. So I'm not sure who we will have for a partner, but everyone we've had has been really great. And it's always been good to shake up who the partner is too. So I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, this is an easy one.
Yeah.
They do good work, and they're the only bid.
There's no one else.
But we will have a new partner, right?
That's the expectation. I don't think Vanessa will continue to be
Yeah.
the partner on this
I
engagement.
mean, Rob, it could have been some of the new additions to the audit committee that drove them out.
Absolutely. Who's that? Did Dan say you wanted to do it?
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to appoint, and can we appoint or do we have to recommend? We reappoint,
You
right? Entertain a motion to appoint Clifton Larson Allen LLP as the auditor for the town of Darien for fiscal year 2025. Malin moves, Rob seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, that's it. Now we just have to approve 6 different regular meeting minutes.
The only thing I do want to add on April 1st, I realized I forgot to attach emailed public comment. So you don't have that in your packet, but I will attach it when we
Okay.
finalize it.
Okay, should we do these individually?
You can do them all at once if you want.
Does anyone have comments, individual?
No.
Okay, does anyone have comments on any of them? Nope.
No.
Yep, okay. So I'll entertain a single motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of the Board of Finance dated March 4th, 2025, March 11th, March 18th, March 25th, April 1st, and April 3rd. Dan moves. Jenny seconds. All those in favor? Unanimous. Special assignments? Give an update on the,
When are we meeting again? I feel like we've been, it's like Groundhog's Day here. We're just seeing each other. Are we next week or 2 weeks? For April's meeting?
This was our April regular
Yeah.
meeting.
So
you
this
won't
is
be
it?
back
Third week of
until
second-
May
May
15th,
something.
I think.
May 15th? I'll get this board a HHR update that comes out. There's one that Jen does, and there's one that the contractors do. That's a little more robust, got a lot of pictures and stuff. So if you guys want an update, I'll forward that, and then I'll talk about it on May 15th. But knock on wood, on time, on budget at this point.
Love it.
But guys, just note, I think it's May 20th.
May 20th.
Is it?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's Tuesday, May 20th.
And we just talked about dispatcher, so that's done. Once again, thanks for everybody's help.
Thank you.
And nothing on audit. So those are my three.
Okay. I guess on GIAC, I'd update, we have a meeting tomorrow night. We continue to advance through the master plan phase. Our consultants, I think with a lot of the feedback we've received during the 3 different sort of in-person events where we invited all of our residents to attend, have continued to develop new plans. There are some more detailed plans around possible parking options, around possible road and or vehicular options. We're beginning to look at governance models in terms of how in the future it might change, and we might have the involvement of a 501c or some other type of conservatory to the extent we're starting to take in outside money as opposed to taxpayer funded money. But things are definitely moving along. I would say we have one more community outreach event where they're going to begin to show more detailed possibilities around what they might do to the stables, what they might do to the carriage house, how they might set up some of the vehicular paths to get more community feedback, but it's beginning to kind of take shape. And I think beginning to develop a number that the town could look at over the next kind of 5 to 7 years in terms of investing in it. With respect to use, I would say the island is completely open. I think on June 1st, it'll be all aspects of the island, absent the temporarily the bridle trail, I think will be open, including for people to bring their pets. And we're beginning to look at ways which we can have some more activity on the island, whether that includes some type of event, picnic tables, benches and other things like that to begin to allow people to use it more. So, big island, moving slow, but thoughtfully. Nothing else on GIAC.
We had a pension fund meeting this afternoon. Through the end of March, it was okay.
Yeah.
We first few days of April, it's down less than the benchmark. And I'll send each of you the report that we received today so you can look through it.
Okay. Chairman's report. Appreciate all the work that all of you did, and Jen, everything that you've kind of led us through in the last 8 weeks of our budget season, particularly while doing 2 jobs. So thank you very much for all your work. I know we could not kind of get to the point of where we are and get through the amount of data we need to review, and without you, I think this year in particular, the way that you sort of downloaded all of OpenGov and our ability to kind of look at it more in a spreadsheet was, I thought, very helpful.
Very, very helpful.
Certainly Dan was a lot less frustrated, right? But it was a big help, and you continue to set high bars, so.
No pressure.
Yeah. So maybe as part of, Jen, would you like to make an introduction?
Yeah. Josh Kaufman is here. He's our new Director of Finance. He started yesterday. I didn't think it would be fair to him if I just went home at the end of the day.
Sinkers win.
That's right.
I'll be sitting here on May 20th.
And we don't want to hear, I'll get back to you, I'll get back to you.
You'll hear it.
Looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Josh, you basically have 42 days to get ready for the May meeting, right? But Well, Jen.
But you also set the agenda, so there you go.
It's gonna be a lot later than this one.
Review the minutes of the April 8th meeting.
Actually meeting, because I'm the one who's going to present it in that time.
Hey, Jim, on the May meeting, are we gonna kind of think about our next 4 to 6 months out?
Yes.
You know how we kind of like, after
Right.
the budget kind of settles in, we kind of think large themes, like what do we want to kind of look at? What's our, like what do we want to kind of, I don't want to say attack, I think that's a little harsh, but like what do we want to look at next? Like one year it was like the, sorry, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
The contribution fund, like what do we want, are we going to talk then about what we want to look at for the rest of, up until next budget cycle?
So why don't we do this as part of the agenda review? Why don't you all email me
Items?
specific things that you think that we should look at during what is otherwise a little bit quieter summer,
Yeah.
and we can begin to dedicate, allocate one of those or maybe two of those to each of our meetings where we don't have a lot of other work.
Yeah.
And we can, as we've done in the past, maybe buddy up or kind of form a little, subgroups on the committee that can begin to work on those and report back.
Sounds good.
Make sure we get Josh up to speed very quickly, or he gets us up to speed very quickly. And, Josh, I wasn't going to mention publicly that, you came from Buchanan, right?
You're allowed to, yeah. That's
Okay. But welcome.
I do.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Dan moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor?
Here, here.
Unanimous. We stand adjourned.
Congratulations, everybody.